Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Stress Less, Achieve More call. My name is Stephanie Matos. I'm a mindset coach here on the Brightly Thrive team. And today we are going to talk about all things stress management. As the call says, it's called Stress Less. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And it's kind of funny how when we think about stress and even just talking about the name of this call, right? Stress less is the beginning part. And when we think about stressing less, that actually sounds quite great, doesn't it? It's like, how can I do that? Can you please teach me how to do that? And so while there are a lot of strategies and techniques and things like that where we can manage stress levels, right? Like deep breathing, listening to certain types of music, avoiding certain types of imagery, whether that be the news or certain types of TV shows, or even sometimes people, certain people in our lives can kind of cause us a lot of stress. Um, I think we can all agree that we can manage these things and do the best that we can. However, I think some of it, and I think even Charlotte, you mentioned this one time where you were like, I'm not saying get rid of it completely, but like deal with it better, right? You're like, I know that stuff pops up. So, and this is like kind of what she was saying, like either last week or the week before that, where it's like, I know that life will happen. How can I do the best that I can to manage this, right? The thing that's living in between our two ears, the brain, a little bit better in spite of the stress, right? Or in the midst of the stress. And so with that being said, what that says to me, right? And so I am a mindset coach, so it's probably no shock that I'm very interested in mindset. And there actually was many studies done, and we've talked about this a little bit too, about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And I know that a lot of people in the education field have heard about this concept. It's pretty widespread at this point. Um, and as you guys probably know, the mindset that we want the kids to have, right? If you're in education, or not so kids, like the adults ourselves can also benefit from this mindset, is growth mindset. So fixed mindset is not very helpful for most things. It really says, it's almost like you're constantly getting stopped by something all the time, whether it's in for kids it would be like on test taking or learning things, or whatever it is. For adults, it's more just adult life things that just kind of feel like everything's, you're hitting a brick wall all the time. And so one thing that I found very interesting in this, so in within the studies and research that have been done by Carol Dweck, is the person who wrote growth mindset versus fixed mindset. But in her clinics and where she works, she's got a ton of. Oops, it says my internet's unstable. If I get wobbly, I'll come back. Okay, and if anything happens to me ever, I will always come back. It might take me a minute or two, but I'll be back. It looks like it's sorted itself out now. Okay, so basically, she's got all these different researchers under her and around her that research the same concept but in different ways, right? And there's one woman who did research specifically on stress, and what was so interesting is that she found that people that had a growth mindset actually look at stress very differently, or experience stress, I should say, very differently than those who have a fixed mindset. So fixed mindset, and I think most of us can understand this, it just feels like you're climbing up a mountain that's never going to end, or like it's like, how many more boulders are you going to put in my backpack while I'm also climbing up this mountain? And so it kind of feels like it's never going to end, and it's just going to get worse sometimes, is kind of what it feels like. Or it could be like, you know what, these rocks are too heavy, take them off my back, I give up, I'm not even going to try to go up that mountain, right? And if you think about it like this, it's kind of like, I had a teacher on here once in this call that was talking about how she had a student that was like, I'm so stupid, I'm not smart, blah blah blah, right? Well, that's a very fixed way of thinking, when maybe they just had a bad test taking day one day, or maybe they didn't sleep enough, maybe they didn't eat well enough, maybe this was just a concept that was kind of challenging for them to understand, but this concept would be very easy for them to understand. But if they go ahead and say, what's the point? I'm not good at this, I'm not good at blank, well, then they're never going to try hard enough to ever find out what they're good at, right? And so the growth mindset people, what was interesting about this is that they experience stress very differently, where when they feel stress, they're actually excited about the outcomes. So they don't feel stressed about feeling stressed, if that makes sense. They experience stress as a means to an end, where it's like, oh, I know when I work really hard or when things are challenging, all these awesome things occur and happen in my life. And it's happened so many times this way that I know that this is just what I can expect. So it becomes an expectation that when they feel challenged, they can expect an awesome result out of it. Right. And so that is like, and just to kind of rewind when we were talking about stress less, right? So sometimes you can't avoid the obstacles and challenges that are in your life. This is what Charlotte was saying the other day, right? It's like, I know that this is going to come up, but how can I handle them better? Right now, with the deep breathing, etc., what that does is it actually offsets the stress hormones in the body and brings in the relaxation response. It stimulates the vagus nerve, which is also connected to the relaxation response, and all kinds of stuff like that. However, this mindset, what happens is that when you think that, yay, this is great, none of that occurs in the body the same way, if that makes sense. So, because we had talked quite a bit about burnout last week, and one of the things that happens when you experience, because what happens is that you get stressed about being stressed. So if you experience, if you've had a challenging time with stress previously, what happens is that you can label any kind of stress that you feel as negative. And that's very much the same way that I was talking about with this kid that had maybe a bad test taking experience and then went ahead and said, no, I'm just a horrible test taker. I'm never going to be good at anything. And I'm not smart. Right, but what it does is it concretes and fixed mindset on where you are, and it won't let you go any further. So you start feeling stressed about being stressed. You start feeling stressed about the test before it's even here. Like a week prior to the test, you're like, oh no, it's gonna be the same thing again, right? And so I call it compounded emotions, where it's like this is bad, and then that's bad, and then that's bad, and then I feel bad, and then I feel bad again, and then I don't sleep, and then I eat a whole thing of cookies, and then it's like all this stuff piles up on top of each other. And so if we can kind of start to adopt this idea of what if this could be actually amazing? And what if it could be sort of like, so I like to be active. I like to be active. I like to go walks and stuff like that. Well, I live in Florida. I know you experience a high level of heat as well, Charlotte. So you understand this where you're at. It's super hot, right? So I'm out there sweating, like thinking like, am I gonna pass out or something? But I'm still enjoying it. I love being outside. I love moving my body. I love actually sweating out whatever toxins are in my body. Like I like the actual activity of it, right? So this is what I mean, where it's like that isn't like, I'm picturing like, when they fan people and feed them grapes and they're laying down or whatever. It's not like that experience. It's actually challenging, but I'm enjoying it, right? So that could be kind of like a kind of simpler example to understand that it, it can actually be perceived as good, but most of us perceive it as bad. And if you think about it like this, where generally when we're getting into that burnout mode or overwhelm mode, anxious, highly stressed, not good, not feeling good, it literally feels like we are being attacked by a lion or a tiger or a bear. That is what it feels like in our nervous system, right? So if we know there's no lion or tiger or bear that's living inside of my computer or in this notebook that's going to attack me or chomp on me, why do I feel like this, right? And that's because our perception around whatever it is that's occurring is skewed to the negative, right? It's more skewed to that fixed mindset or more skewed to the pessimistic mindset. And so one of a great strategy for stress management that has nothing to do with actually tools, techniques, or strategies, well, I guess it is considered a strategy, would be more, how can I look at this from an optimistic lens? How can I look at this from a lens that shows that all of this hard work is going to be worth it? Because if I don't think it's going to be worth it, I'm not going to want to do it. And I work in a lot of different companies, and one of the companies that I work for, they're building businesses, right? And so and business building is not for the faint of heart, right? You start with nothing and then you end up with something, but along the way, it's an unpaid hard work because you're working on building something, you know. And so there was a woman that was in one of my calls the other day, and there's a lot of people that are on different paths. I mean, different stages of the path. So for example, somebody might have started on Monday, somebody else might have been there for 2 years, somebody else might be like 3 months in, somebody else might be 8 months in. So we have a bunch of different people that have been there, done that, or are brand new. And so one of the ladies who it took her about a year to get her thing out into the market, and she really struggled a lot with mindset. It was really really challenging. She had a lot of imposter syndrome and all kinds of stuff popping up. And so now she's on the other side of that and she's experiencing this success. Okay. So we were talking about all the boulders in your backpack going up the hill. Well, now she's on that down slope and she's taken off the backpack and given the boulders to some of the other people on her team or, whatever it is. And she said something that was so awesome, which was that I am so glad I went through that. She's like, it was life changing. And now I don't even care. It took me a year, because when she was in there, she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's been 6 months and I haven't, da, 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 blah, 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 blah. And she's like, it doesn't even matter. Now that I'm on the other side of this, I'm so happy that I went through all of that. When she was in the middle, if I would have asked her that, she probably would have said, no, I'm not happy about any of this. I actually hate all of it. Right. So that's just yet another example of how, you know, that negative feeling because it doesn't feel good because really what's it's the human brain is very interesting because we do a lot of energy conservation. So based on how humans have existed for thousands of years, there was a big it was a necessity to rest and recover, right? Because they were literally going who knows how many hundreds of miles to hunt to have food for a while, and then they wouldn't have any food for a while, and then they'd have more food, and so it was a little bit like feast and famine. And so energy conservation was quite important for exerting a lot of energy and then resting, recovering like this. And so our bodies still need a little bit of, so I don't like this, right? Or none of us like this, where it's like, go, 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 all the way down, all the way up, all the way down. But this is a little bit what we're looking for, where it's like energy management, right? Where I'm stressed, but then I recover, and I'm stressed, and then I recover, and then I'm stressed. What happens is a lot of people are like, da, 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 and they never have any of the recovery part. And on top of that, when we are in a mode where we really do need to recover, and when I say recover, it doesn't mean lay down, take a nap, I mean, sometimes probably, yeah. But in general, on a daily basis, it's like go get a breath of fresh air, go get your favorite drink and drink it, or go talk to one of your coworkers for a bit, or look at all the things that you've accomplished and actually give yourself a pat on the back. That is very something that all of us can do a better job on, is patting ourselves on the back for all of the stuff that we have done instead of beating ourselves up for all the things that we did not do, which is quite common. And so all of these things, just that way of thinking, acting a little bit differently, taking these 5 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time, 15 minutes if you have it, right? To just recover, but strategically recover. And when I say strategically, what that means is that one day deep breathing might be the thing. The next day going outside might be the thing. The next day doing none of that might be the thing. The next day it could be music. The next day, right? So strategically meaning for where you are and who you are at that time, or whatever it is that you're dealing with at that time. Now, this weekend, for example, I had a rest weekend. I literally hardly got anything done, but it was all right. I laid almost the whole time. I was like vertical, no, horizontal. Most of the whole entire weekend. It was just one of those weekends. That's what I needed, and it was okay that I didn't go and have any fun because I had plenty of fun here, and so that was what I needed that weekend. Another weekend, it might be like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see my friends and get out in nature, and I think that it's important for us to honor those things and not judge ourselves for what we need at that time. Um, just kind of circling. Do you have any questions at all, Charlotte? I know I'm doing a lot of talking. Is anything resonating with you? You want to add anything?
I'm very familiar with this topic as
Oh, cool.
former cognitive coach. I was trained in
Yeah.
that, and I've taken micro credentials in positive psychology and psychological first aid. So the mindset is involved in both of those heavily. So I am very familiar with this. Plus, I've been on both sides of that um, very heavily for my mom will tell you from like the day she adopted me till my early 20s, I was very fixed mindset. I have a lot of trauma in my past, and I was very much like, this is all it's going to be. It's never going to be any better. I'm not going to go to college because there's no point. Like, that's just how I was. And it took a major life event to open my eyes and realize that in my early 20s that if I continue on this victimhood path, continue on um, keeping my mind closed to all the possibilities out there, that I would be miserable for the rest of my life. So I made some changes. I found, you know, I'm trying to remember what it stands for, but the first thing that I ever found that had to do with um, I don't know why my mind just went blank. That had to do with growth mindset. It's called WOOP. It's
Hmm.
WOOP. So it's wish, outcome, obstacle, plan. So it was my first introduction. I believe Angela Ducksworth is the one who writes about that. So that was my first
Hmm.
introduction into using obstacles to your advantage, much like you were saying.
Hmm.
Hmm. And understanding that yes, your body reacts to positive and negative stress the same way, but you can retrain your brain, as you were talking about. So I'm very familiar with these. It is stop it. Sorry, my internet's trying to connect to a different internet. Um, um, so like I said, I'm very familiar, but I think it's a great topic to get out there because you wouldn't believe how many people don't understand closed and fixed and open mindset, excuse me. So,
Yeah, you know what's really so thank you so much for sharing all of that. That's incredible. And I'm so happy that you had this moment of this eye-opening moment that you can actually change your whole entire life and don't have to live like that anymore. There's a lot of people who, sadly never get there,
right.
or but it's a lack of awareness. So you luckily had this thing that happened that helped you kind of like see the light, so to speak, about this. And there's a lot of people who just don't understand how they are their own worst enemy, or they are the ones that are standing in their own way. And that sounds, when you say it like that, it's like, how mean. Like, how mean. However, if you look at it a different way, right, again, just kind of changing the lens, it's like, whoa, how powerful. Like, if I created this chaos, then I could create something much more awesome. If I'm the catalyst to this, that means I can be the catalyst to that, right? And so that sounds like kind of like what you did, where you were like, you know what, if I change this and this and that, it's going to be really great for me. And what's the point of not trying? I'm already not happy. So this is the
Yeah.
other thing too. It's like, what's the point of not testing some of these things out if you're already in a place where you're feeling very stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, or even worse, just thinking that what's the point of me even trying for anything, because I'll never be able to accomplish or achieve anything. Which I was like that too as well. And when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, I did the same thing. I was like, I'll never be able to go to college. I'll fail, flunk out. And I got straight A's. I don't know where that came from. So this is the thing,
Exactly.
is that it's created. It's not even real.
Right.
It's not even real. And so if that's not real, what else are we creating that isn't real? Right. And I think, did I talk to you about this? Because I've mentioned this a couple of times, where anything that feels different feels awkward, right? So if we're used to thinking we're not good enough, we're not good enough, we're not good enough, thinking you are good enough feels so foreign and awkward, and it feels very uncomfortable
It
because you're
does.
not
Yeah.
used to it, but it's definitely a habit. And so this is what I was going to say. I'm not sure if I mentioned this on this call. Um I go to a sauna quite frequently in my gym. Have I talked about this before?
I don't
And
think so.
okay,
Sorry.
so
Go.
you would remember, because I don't have that many sauna stories. This is this is the only one. So, and the sauna is just shaped like the seating is like kind of like a U shape. So it's just wooden seating around like this. There's a heat source and a door, and that's it. There's no good seat. It's not like if I sit here, it's hotter, and if I sit here, it's cooler, and if I sit here, it's a better view. And if I sit, no, it's all the same. Or this has a soft seat. That has a nope, they're all the same. And I always sit when you enter into the right, just there. I always sit right there all the time. And I always go on off hours because I make my own schedule and all of that kind of stuff. So it's easy for me to skip the heavy traffic areas of the gym. And so I went in the other day and somebody was sitting in that spot, right? That's my spot. It's not really my spot, but that's where I always sit. And I have for like the last year. Nobody's ever been in there. So I walked in and my body immediately had a response to having to sit in a different seat. Okay. Same exact material, same exact view, same exact heat, same exact room, everything. And I was sitting there because, as somebody who's really interested in the brain and what happens in the body and like all of that kind of stuff, I used it as an opportunity just to feel the discomfort that I felt. Now, don't get me wrong, it was slight because it was something that wasn't a big deal. It was just a seat or whatever. But guess what? As soon as she got up, guess who moved? I moved my towel over, moved and sat in my right seat, and then all was well in the world. And I didn't feel so awkward anymore. And it didn't feel odd sitting there. And so I was thinking to myself, and there's something so benign as this, like that literally does not mean a thing and doesn't matter. Imagine all the other places in my life where things might be a little bit more high stakes, that I'm making things mean things that they aren't, or I'm getting stuck in old patterns. Because basically that was a habit. I go in, I sit, blah, blah, and so that habit was keeping me stuck in a certain way of thinking. In that instance, doesn't matter at all. Not going to hurt anything, not going to change anything. However, where else in my life am I accidentally doing things just because it feels more comfortable to do it like this than like that? And where might I be holding myself back in ways, so it's just kind of an interesting thing. But that that is an example of how fixated our body and mind can get on patterns. And a lot of the patterns that we're talking about right now are ones that aren't serving us. So patterns of behavior, thinking, feeling, and acting that are not serving you. And then when you first start, so I didn't hear you say, I made a decision and everything changed and everything went well. It was like, I made the decision and then I started changing. And now you
Yep.
can look back and say, thank you so much
Hmm.
for going through all of that hard work and dedication and blood, sweat, and tears that you went through in order to become who you are today. It was so worth it. However, at the time, I'm sure it was very challenging, you know?
It was. And I just kept telling myself the amount of energy that you spend upset or trying to victimize yourself or just that negative energy that I put into everything. If I take that same energy and turn it into positive, think how much better it's going to go. And, I ended up graduating with my bachelor's in a year and a half. I started at this job. This was my first one out of college.
No
And
way. Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah, I had a dead end job before that for 12 years. And I was stuck in that's all I'm going to do. Um, and then I was like, okay, let's go for two. And I went and got my master's, and I started taking that energy that I already had that I was making negative, and I started turning it into
You
positive.
veered it. Yeah,
Mhm.
you took the same amount of energy and focus, however, you veered it
Yes.
over here. However, this, and you can just tell me if you experience this. It's like if you're used to this, and then you do this, what happens is that this tries to
Oh,
creep,
yeah.
and then you have to
Yes.
keep rerouting, and then all of a sudden you're like, I was here all day today. Oh my gosh, like I didn't have to reroute at all. And that's the
Yep.
thing, is that a lot of people, this is it's challenging. And you have to have a positive belief system that says the more I do this, the more it's going to work. The more I do
Mhm.
this, the more it's going to work. And for a lot of people, unfortunately, they do have to kind of hit a rock bottom. It's not
Yes.
necessary, you guys. I highly recommend that you don't need this and don't do this. However, I would say both of us kind of had that experience where it was like you just are like, I'm so sick of that,
Yeah.
why not this? I've already spent so much time, effort, energy. It's gotten me nowhere. Let's try something different and see where it gets us. And
Yeah.
apparently, it worked very well for you. I'm very happy to hear that. And the only thing that I would add in, and maybe we can talk about this Thursday if you're able to come. I know you aren't always able to, but we can talk a little bit about some of the positive psychology movement. So I actually wrote down, so you're a cognitive coach and psychological first aid. I've never heard of that.
Oh,
I'm gonna look it up and see what it is. It sounds cool. But anyways, so in the positive psychology movement, they're probably using some of the things that you learned within these certifications and
mhm,
kind of different things that you've been educated on. Because essentially, what positive psychology went was like, why are we spending so much time fixing people? What if we gave them tools so that they just
yes,
had
yeah,
better tools to actually become who they were always meant to be quicker, right? And so instead of like, putting a band-aid on the anxiety and depression, let's see how we can maybe avoid the anxiety and depression or whatever it is for people. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the strategies and techniques that I really find interesting for positive psychology next week. And what's interesting is that a lot of them are mindset based. So again, it's so don't get me wrong, I love breath work, visualization, meditation, all of that kind of stuff. I think there's a time and a place for it. However, that almost is like putting a band-aid on something if you don't fix the initial input. So if you don't fix the initial thoughts that are causing the
yeah,
negative feelings, then it's kind of like you're chasing this thing all the time where it's like, gotta breathe again. Oh, okay, now I'm freaking out again. Breathe again. And it's
mhm.
like, oh, what if I can stretch out the distance between the times when I need to utilize these tools and strategies? And so maybe we can talk a little bit about that in the next call.
Yeah, yeah, I'd be happy to.
Ooh, love it. Okay, thank you so much for joining me today. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it. If you hang on for 1 second, I will end the recording. So you guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Awesome conversation as always. I really enjoy hosting these calls so much. I hope that I get to see more of your beautiful faces. I haven't gotten to meet very many people. So if you are watching the replay, I would love to invite you to join me live if you're ever able to join me live. All right, you guys, until we meet again, so much love, so many blessings, so much success to you, and hopefully I get to see you very soon. Bye, everybody. Bye.